Oh, yes. Hello. Hey. I'd first like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, on which lands we meet today, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. Thank you. Coda, you go first.
All right, let's get this started. Okay, first, can I go back a slide? Where's the clicker? Right, great. Hi, my name's Coda. Our talk we're talking about tonight is titled Artificial Indifference, or How I Learned to Stop Generating Slop and Love the Art. First off, who are we? I'm Coda. I'm Inkmer. Sorry.
You're both of us. Hi, I'm Inkmo. We have made one game together previously, before actually meeting in person, which had a very niche audience. It was called Beck Portrayed Us Bagging Challenge. I can talk to you about it later. It was a really good game. Um, but right now we are both working for a studio called Weird Flex Studio. That was started by Maze Wallen, myself. Nayu Kagori is our narrative writer, and Coda has recently joined us as programmer. We are creating a game that is set here in Nam. It is based around the Wurundjeri Wurrung seasons, and you play a little maestro bee. All the plants create music, and you cultivate little, I guess, a musical journey where you bring your plants along, you jam, you unlock songs, and I don't know why I've forgotten the spells, but we're partnered with the Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria. Everything that we are doing with our game, we are trying to set in real place and tell a real story about music here in Melbourne, as well as the plants and animals and what they're doing throughout the 7 or 8 seasons, depending on the year. One of the really important things we've got in our the way we do work is we have a very particular stance on artificial intelligence in use in our work, which is that we get you to sign that you will not use this without the permission of the employers, which is all of us when we become a co-op, and that we all make an agreement or a decision as a group as to whether we use any tools or anything like that. And currently, none of us want to see that in our work at all.
Yeah. So rewinding a little bit, technology. Yeah, why did we trick rocks into thinking? I grew up absolutely loving technology. I thought it would be the answer to all the world's problems. And yeah, and with these latest advancements that we've kind of delved into, NFTs, cryptocurrency, and now generative AI, I've started to hit this like disillusionment era where I feel like technology really isn't going the way I want it to go, and it's not really improving lives the way that its marketing materials is saying it is. And we're seeing AI pretty much presented everywhere. So what actually is generative AI? So it's basically, it's machine learning algorithm that's got a marketing team behind it to promise that it is the solution to every single problem. But before all that happened, back in like 2020, 2021, I worked on this photography game using a generative AI tool called Beyond the Lens. It's a little abstract photography game where you're exploring a surreal landscape. And as you take photos, it gets generated into like photorealistic images using an NVIDIA tool called Gorgan, which basically they trained on a bunch of Flickr photos. And then they've like mapped all the photos to solid colors, defining like what is in that photo. So green is grass and blue is the sky and a deeper navy is like the sea. And then based on what you draw, you can then generate it into a photorealistic image where you're turning those colors into like actual landscape artifacts, which I thought was really cool, but I'm a terrible 2D artist. So I hijacked the web server, brought it into Unity, and then used a capture tool so that you can now take your captures of this 3D environment you explore and then translate those into photographic, like photoreal images. There's a bit of gameplay. I'm not going to show it too long because we have so much to talk about and we are very pressed for time. But yeah, you walk around, take photos, and you can see in your little viewfinder thing that you've got the output from the AI model hosted by NVIDIA. Yeah, let's take a photo, and there it is. Anyway, yep. So I showcased this a little bit, and it was right at the time where generative AIs like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney were taking off. So there were like all these protests on ArtStation and Twitter. But I thought that I should, as like an apology or a thank you for playing the game, get to print out a little Polaroid picture of the landscape that you generate. And I feel like that brought like a really tangible element to it and made it very like ephemeral and temporary, besides like, you know, all this digital slop that's up on the internet forever. And yeah, a lot of people found that really meaningful, really special. A lot of artists that I admire really admired the game. And I just made me think about where we're going with these tools and why. And, you know, it's been years now. I've been able to showcase the game a bunch, talk about it a bunch. But I'm noticing this like trend with generative AI starting to skew from like weird niche tools and turning them into like more generic, like one size fits all. Now you can generate literally anything you type, whether it's an image or whether it's text, and now it's coming into video and 3D. And they're like actively trying to threaten our livelihoods whilst making content that is comparatively leagues worse than what any human that's like moderately capable can produce. So I feel like, yeah, we're here to really try and open up a discussion and talk about that. But rounding up the story about Beyond the Lens, the web server that the game used was very unceremoniously shut down. You cannot access it whatsoever. And even the tools that NVIDIA built like with that model that runs locally, they've like shut all that down as well. So I just think it's really interesting. Like no announcement was made, nothing happened. It's just like, oh, this isn't generating enough profit for us. We're just going to close it. And the users, you know, will have to deal with it. So I think that like that attitude and that approach is kind of like a little microcosm for like this whole AI space.
That happened to you as you were about to give a talk and present Beyond the Lens, like, and yeah.
Yeah. So I was about to present it at Powerhouse in Sydney, and then 3 days before my presentation, the server got shut down. So I had to like scrounge stuff together. But it made for a really interesting story. And it also means I don't have to like stress about the game anymore because it's done. Yeah, so that's mostly why my view on like generative AI has changed since making that game. I also feel like, you know, growing up in the age, like the information age, where we can just search any question and pretty much always get a reliable answer. Over the years, I feel like information is being like actively obscured from us. We're being told to, you know, automate programming instead of learning how to program. We're being taught to like jump straight to the conclusion without understanding like all the steps of reasoning behind the problem. And I think that actively impairs our ability for like critical thinking and problem solving and just being like generally creative, because you're no longer like trying to solve a problem, you're just trying to get to the answer, which I feel like is far worse.
Should mention the chocolate lily.
Yeah, so for instance, for our bee game, we are looking up native flora across Victoria, and one of them was the chocolate lily. And we're basically trying to find for like different stages of plant growth so that we can, you know, make art for the game. And the first result, which was very prominently highlighted by Google, was AI generated. And yeah, what did it look like?
So the flower was a chocolate lily in its common name, and which is a beautiful sort of like purpley blue flower. And you can imagine if you typed chocolate lily into a generative AI tool, what it would give you. It was exactly that. It looked like a Kalia lily, and it was made of chocolate. And I think that was like the first result. So yeah, it's incredibly frustrating because that's a really obvious that's not right thing. But what else is in there that we don't realize is not reliable?
I'll pass it over to Inkmo.
I'm Inkmo. That's me. I met Coda for the first time in person at the Savvy Showcase where you showed Beyond the Lens. I really loved it. I got really excited. We spent a long time talking about it. I made Coda make me a meat tree, and I really wish we had a photo from that. But instead, I was like, oh, I could just draw it for this talk. So that is my meat tree. I don't think it looks too unlike
Yeah, it looked
that.
pretty accurate. Yeah.
And that's us in front of Beyond the Lens. So I, like, back in the days of like early Dolly, like I myself generated a lot of slop, a lot of things that I thought were hilarious, sent them to my friends. But over time, I've learned so much about its impacts on artists, the art industry, just everything, the environment. And I refuse to use it any longer. And I really discourage anybody I talk to about it from using it. Um, I believe that art is an expression of ideas, feelings, thoughts, and observations, and it's not just the end result. Art is a lot of storytelling and sharing human experiences. We crave human connection. It's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you're familiar with that. And there is also a heart to art. Art's not just like the picture at the end. It's a whole process. And I find that people pushing generative AI over hiring an artist they lack that passion for storytelling. They lack the passion for art. What they do have a passion for is money. And I know we all love money, but I'm not an artist because it's going to make me millions of dollars. Oh, how I wish that it could make me millions of dollars. But I have things I want to share and tell, and I want to contribute positively to the world, and I want to hear other people's stories. When I walk through galleries or I see even graffiti or I hear a song, it gives me a chance to have a peek at what that artist is feeling and what they want to convey. And it often also inspires me to tell a story that I have in response. And I think that is a really beautiful thing, especially with so much technology around us. The world was getting smaller, and it feels like everybody's getting further apart again. So that's why I love building community and creating events and things where we can get together. Generative AI doesn't do this, though. It doesn't take inspiration from its data set. It's just pattern recognition. It isn't inspired by art. It's stealing it. And AI art only works through theft.
That's the
Yes. This is a really great quote from an app which I don't want to talk about. The underlying purpose of AI is to allow wealth to access skill while removing from the skill the ability to access wealth. I, for a long time, have been feeling like this increasing sense of despair, this really heavy air of despondency, and trying to figure out why every time I see arguments for or against generative AI, or I see examples of it, do not even get me started on the Studio Ghibli trend. But I kind of figured it out. And it's that what is making me so angry is that art is being treated as a commodity. Artists and their art have been reduced to microtransactions. Capitalism reduces everything. It reduces time to the immediate, and it ruins our working relationships, value for art and process, and our value for the past and future and of the world and its culture. There are people that say to us, let's just use AI art. It's really quick, blah, blah, blah. I've got friends who have had to watch their employers let their entire department go. And as the last lead artist standing, get told, we're not hiring anybody else, just use AI as the answer without any understanding and of what has given the value to a project in the first place. We're told we should be flattered if someone uses AI to mimic our style. We're told to stop caring as much, that it's inevitable, or that it's not good enough to worry about. It can't be all those things, but it does hurt. And it hurts even more when artists don't feel like anyone seems to care about what they're creating or doing. Artists' opinions don't seem to matter because what matters to the big people, I can't remember what I was going to say there, is that they only care about the opinions of the consumer. So these two are, I worked for Incubator, which is a store that artists can rent a space and sell their works. It's a retail space, so they don't have to worry about all the overheads and everything. But we had to put in clauses in the agreements that you couldn't sell AI generated art, like that you had to either be part of the design process or the creation. And as this was probably the case that there were two cases that made us do that. One was someone submitted this and said that this is what they wanted to sell. And I had to teach people at work what to look for as well. They actually asked, like, how do I tell what's AI art? Because we get everything in little JPEGs. And I was like, well, first of all, she has 3 legs. Clocks don't look like that. And this is by the same person. And there was another person who brought in things that they'd made by hand, but then later just brought in a whole bunch of greeting cards that were also AI generated art for Mother's Day. There was an artist alley here in Melbourne that I was helping an artist at. And there was one booth where that was going around the whole market. We suspected that this artist was just selling stuff they either bought off AliExpress or was AI generated. And I asked Maze, if you know Maze Wallen, it was Maze, to go up and just have a little peek for me. And Maze, God bless them, they just said, is this AI art? And the person goes, oh, no. It's Canva. The same picture. And now artists are also finding that they have to prove that their work is not generated by AI. People post their time lapses of them drawing digitally in Procreate, but we're finding now that can also be AI generated. So there's so much mental load and work that is required by both audiences and artists and people trying to make safe spaces for artists to ensure that we can identify this slop and make sure that it's not mistaken for someone's work. That's okay. There is another issue where the well's been poisoned for stock images. So if you can't create an image, you used to be able to just go to Envato or iStock or something and find a picture. But this is from a recent case where Adobe is posting AI-generated images this is of Indigenous children, and is very clearly doesn't represent Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander children. The markings on their bodies are just random. They don't mean anything. There were even other images where the children they look more Asian than Indigenous to Australia. And then there's also this, which starts to make you think how they are training the AI to create this. What works have they stolen to make this? And it's really disheartening. And I could go on for so long about this, but I really, really recommend and encourage everyone to also read up on ICIP, which is Indigenous Cultural and Intellectual Property. Terry Jenke, the lawyers, have a really great book called True Tracks. They also do workshops. If you want to talk to us about that later, feel free. And then in the case of actual artist alleys, a lot of them now do have clauses in their agreements to say that you cannot sell anything that's AI generated. However, there's nothing stopping people from hiring a booth in another section of the con and just selling whatever they want. AI generated, check. Stuff that they've gotten from AliExpress that is actually the art stolen from another artist who's at a table meters away. That has happened at Smash and Oz Comic Con. And this was at Oz Comic Con last year, and they gave Shein this massive booth. It to me adds absolutely no value to Oz Comic Con or Artist Alley events. And yeah, I think what I will say is that AI only works through theft, stolen labor, stolen data, and environmental harm. Does that sound familiar? So yeah, we're living in a time where art is really accessible. It's the most accessible it's ever been. We're surrounded by art, writing, moving picture, music, games, so much creativity. So don't be fooled into thinking that you can't try or let anybody else tell you, oh, it's too hard, but if we use AI, it's easy and it's fast. That's not the point. Anyone can be an artist. Anyone has always been able to be an artist well before generative AI came along. And we need to foster a culture where no one feels the pressure to use AI. Talk to people, artists, writers, programmers. We're not scary. They're not scary. We want to collaborate. Come join our community at Sabby. It's filled with game devs and artists and just other people like-minded. We've built so much together over there. Muck around and find out what happened to photo bashing, terrible photoshops. Teach, learn, share the process, demystify your trade, make it easier and more welcoming to learn. Come talk to us.
Yeah, and the reason for this talk is because, yeah, I really think the way we can solve a lot of these underlying problems with generative AI is to demystify the process, be more transparent about how we do the things we do, actively invite people to learn rather than try to just like get to the end result. And I also really think we need to talk about how this stuff is affecting us personally in our hobbies, in our professions, in our day-to-day lives. I'm seeing AI prop up in every single consumer product in existence.
I yell every time I open things now because it's always telling me to.
Oh, like everything's
Yeah.
voice activated,
Yeah.
everything's
Go
like,
away.
yeah, anyway. Yeah, I think we can talk about this. I think we should have some really good conversations about this.
Yeah.
But for now, thank you very much for listening to us. It means a lot.
Thank you.